This is Gemara Menachos, Daf Samoch Aleph, and we're holding on Samoch Amid Beis. We're at the very end of the narrow lines, middle of a lengthy Shak V'Tarya. Rav Yehuda, Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon just finished saying that the Tzadashav Shaban we cannot learn from wine, Shekin Mitsuyan, because they are very common, very frequent. And now we throw the ball back to Rabbi Yehuda. This was in the middle of a larger shakvataria, the conversation back and forth. Says Rabbi Yehuda, the Rabbi Yehuda Adarabba, Ha Mitzuya Tvei. Says Rabbi Yehuda, you're telling me it's Mitzuya? No, the Omer, the Minchas Omer, is even more Mitzuya. Why? Because it's brought every year. Hanach Zivnin Dula Mashla Klal. Whereas the Minchas Chayte and the Minchas Kinois are only brought on occasion, if there's an Aveira, if there's a Matzav of Saita. So they're not necessarily as common. Oyeinoi, says the Gemara. So now we go back to the Brisa. Back to the Brisa, which is going to be a third reason that we can't have this lien. But Oyeinoi Ella, Oyeinoi Omer Vevisa. Or maybe the Torah says you should bring Ella on the second medium-sized line. Sheyachan misnadev, maybe mincha acheres. That a yachid could be nisnadev, donate, bring another mincha. Chutz meila shebinin. Aside for those that are in the regular minchas nidava. Videnu. You know what I would tell you? Tzibur, maybe mincha minachitim chayva. A tzibur brings a minchas chitim from wheat. This is the shtei halachem. And maybe mincha minas ayrim chayva, and it brings from barley as well, the regular carbon aimer. So I would think av yachid, so to a singular person, she maybe mincha minachitim nedava could bring wheat. A mincha from wheat. I would think Yavi mincha minas ayrin nidava. He could bring either from wheat or he could bring from barley. Just like there's a minchas of the tzibur that's brought from wheat and barley, I would think the same thing applies by the individual on the nidava level. On this, Talmud Laimar says the Torah, Eila, on the fifth medium-sized line, Eili Ella Eila. Only these type of menachos you're allowed to bring. Zok the Torah, Eila, V'avisem, that what? Of minchas nidava, only of barley, only of sa'irim, can be brought. Says the Gemara, maybe Ella teaches us, to someone who says, it should be upon me to bring a carbon mincha. That what? Maybe chamishasan. Maybe he has to bring all of them. How do we know that we could compartmentalize and we could say that you bring this carbon or that carbon? Maybe by virtue of the fact that one accepts upon themselves to bring a nidava, then what? Then maybe he has to bring all of them. Talmud Laimar says the Torah, me'ile ratza achas mevi. If you want, you could bring one of them. Ratza chamishasan mevi. Or if you want, you could bring all five. So maybe that's what the pasuk is teaching us. Now, if that's what the pasuk is teaching us, now we don't have a pasuk teaching us that you cannot bring it from Soirim. Rabbi Shimon Omer, back to the words of the Brisa. Esa mincha l'rabbis shar minachos includes other minachos kigoyim, minchas necharim of goyim, minchas nashim of women, lehagasha. It comes to include the din of hagasha as we've been discussing by these other carbon minchos. Yachal shani marbe av shtei alechem. Maybe as well we could be marbe as well the shtei alechem and v'lechem upon him. Talmud Laimar says the Torah me'ele from these. Umar Rayis, and how do you know in classical form the Rabbi Shar Menachos oisi shtei alechem v'lechem upon him. Mar b'ni Shar Menachos shish be'am li'ishim amar b'shar Menachos, why? Because they're brought upon the Mizbeach. Which part? The Kaimetz. Umoitzi Anishte Alechem. V'lechem Aponim. She'in me'an lishem. These are unique karbanos. They're not brought on the Mizbeach. But frakti Gemara 1 second. V'alei minchas nesachem kula lishim. But we know the minchas nesachem is brought entirely on the Mizbeach, is entirely burnt. Yachol Yehei Tuna Hagasha. So based on what we just said, that Hagasha, bringing to the Mizbeach, is an offshoot off of Leishim, is an offshoot of bringing it onto the Mizbeach. So says the Gemara, maybe the Minchas Nesachim should require that as well. That's what we need a pasuk for. But Rav Shimon already used the word v'akrivai moments ago to teach us the minchas kinais of the saita has a din of hagasha. Says the Gemara v'hekre v'akriva. We have two psukim, two words. Omar ra'is Rabbi Shar Menachos loitzi minchas tesachim. How do we know that we're marbe all other menachos have a din of hagasha and the minchas tesachim does not? Says the Gemara as we turn over to Samach Aleph Amud Aleph. I'll tell you why. Marbe ni shar menachos. You know why I include shar menachos? Shabois biglal atzman. Because they come on their own accord. That's why they're brought. That's the carbon. Because they're not brought for themselves. They're brought because of the nisachim. That what? They come from themselves. And I would think Yachal Tunas Agasha. Maybe it's in of Agasha. You should bring it close, which excludes the Minchas Kain and the Minchas Kain Mashiach. Says Gemara, how can you say that? How can you say that Tamalaymar Vigisha Haimi Bailel Gufa? We did this for the din itself. Shatuna Gisha, the stam original Makar of Agasha. Says Gemara, Min Vihigish Vigisha. So now Umar Rais Rabbi Shar Menachos Loitzi Minchas Kain and Minchas Kain Mashiach. How do we know stam Menachos are included? And Minchas Kain, Minchas Kain Mashiach are excluded. Says the Gemara, Amar ben Ishar Menachos Ishish Mehen Leishim, because they are brought on the Mizbeach. And Ubayis Beglatza, so we see how things are building, trying to figure out the qualifications that are yes brought, that are not brought. Says the Gemara, put them together. If you have both, that it's Leishim, it's brought in the Mizbeach, and it's Ubayis Beglatzman, then yeah, Yesh Mehem L'Kohanim, and as well, on top of all that, Yesh Mehem L'Kohanim, they go part of it to the Kohen. Umaytin Ishtei Lechem Lechem Abanim Shein Mehem L'Ishim Umechas Nesachim Shein Eiban B'Klatzman Umechas Kohanim Umechas Kohen Mashiach Shein Mehem L'Kohanim. So all three qualifications. Vehirim, says the Gemara, we conclude the Brisa from yesterday. Vehirim, you should separate Yachol B'Kli. Tamar Vehirim Yana B'Komsai. Maharama Amar Lalam B'Komsai. Avarama Amar Kan is B'Komsai. We continue with the new Mishnah. Elu Te'una is Tenufa. The previous Mishnah, we spoke about Tenufa, we spoke about Hagasha, and now we had four different categories. Yes, Tenufa, yes, Hagasha. No Tenufa, no Hagasha. Yes, just Tenufa, and yes, just Hagasha. So our Mishnah begins with Elu Tenufa is Tenufa, and Vein Tenus Hagasha. Here are the categories of those that only have a din of Tenufa. Says the Mishnah, like Shemin Shal Metzeira, V'Ashamai, V'Abikurim Kediv Rav Lez ben Yaakov, Ve'emurei Shal Meyachid, V'Chazav V'Shoik Shalahen, Echanashim V'Echanashim B'Yisrael. Whether we're talking about men, whether we're talking about women, be Yisrael with Yidin v'loy ba'acherim, but not with anyone else. We have to see in the Gemara what exactly that means. Says Rashi, Shtei alechem v'shtei kivsei aseres, the two lambs of Shavuos, the Shtei alechem, keitaru oiseh. What is the tenufa of the kivsei aseres? You have two entities. You have the two loaves of bread and you have the two lambs. So you place the two lambs on top of the two loaves of bread. And you hands underneath it. And you wave it up and then you wave it down. Says the Torah waved and raised. Tenufa haisa b'mizrach. Tenufa is on the east side of the Mizbeach. Hagasha is b'mayrav. Tenufa is koidmais. Lagasha, waving comes before bringing it closer, before the Hagasha, bringing it to the Mizbeach. Another carbon, minchas aimer, uminchas kenais, tunois Hagasha, utenufa. Now we're in the next category. We're in the category that requires both. Lechem hapanim uminchas esachim is the next category, in tunos loigasha, v'loi tenufa. Rabbi Shimon aimer, gimel minim teunim. Three types of karbanos, teunin shalish matzos. Shalish mitzvahs, have three mitzvahs. Shtayim b'cholach zvachas, two of them. Shtayim b'cholach zvachas. So again, three karbanos, three mitzvahs, but each of these three requires two of the three mitzvahs, and shlish is ein ben, but not the third. What are we talking about? V'iluhin. Zivchei shalmei yachid, zivchei shalmei tzibor, asha mitzayra. These three karbanos. Now, what about these three karbanos? Says the Mishnah, zivchei shalmei yachid is tunin tzmicha. It requires smicha chayim, but smicha while it's alive. Tenufa shchutin, and waving it after it was shechted. But ve'in ben tenufa v'nayim, but there's no tenufa while it's alive. Next, zivchei shalmei tzibor is tunin tenufa chayim u'shchutim. You have to wave it by both. But ve'in ben smicha. Vasha mitzayra, ton smicha, and utenufa chayv ain't by tenufa shchuta. So really we have two, which is three. We have tenufa, we have smicha, and then we have to figure out whether it's done when it's alive or whether it's done after the shchita. Whether the tenufa is done after the shchita and whether the smicha is done both when it's alive and potentially after as well. Says the Gemara. Tanarabanan. Beginning with the first part of the Mishnah, which is the tenufa of the Mitzayra. Ve'ekra v'isa la'asham v'asla Hashem ve'inifa sam tenufa. You take the lamb, you bring it as an asham with the loig of shemen, and you wave it. Malamid, simply, shatuna tenufa. You need tenufa ke'echad all together. The loig of shemen as well as the carbon asham all are waved together. Uminayin, how do you know? I know if you did tenufa each on their own, it's yatsa. Tamlem veker v'isai la asham ve'inif yachal yenev yachsav yenev. You do both. Tamlem tenufa v'loy tenu voice. Fnei Hashem b'mizrach. Ay v'amar l'fnei Hashem yachal b'mayrav. Amri hani mili mincha dekri chatas v'chatas tuni yisai v'keren dreimis mizrachas. Lo yisaid. Excuse me. One more time. Hani mili mincha. Hani mili mincha. I think you said chatas. Hani mili mincha de ikri chatas. It's a mincha that's called a chatas, and therefore, as a din of a chatas that what teuna yisaid. And the Karen Draimis, the southeastern corner, Mizrachis, lo yisaid, does not have a yisaid, and that's the reason why the Hagasha can't be brought Bisan Mizrach on the eastern side. But over here by the Mitzayra, there's no such thing as the Karen Draimis Mizrachis, and therefore it can be done all on one side. Continues with the next part of the Mishnah, 5 lines from the bottom, 6 lines from the bottom, excuse me. Vabikurim kedivi Rav Laz ben Yaakov. My Rav Laz ben Yaakov, the Tanya, ve'elokach koyin, and the koyin takes the bikurim. Limit al bikurim the shisha shatun and tenufa. The Rav Laz ben Yaakov, my time, Rav Laz ben Yaakov. Kamer yad mishlamim. Take the basket. Your hand should be brought close. Makan, as you turn over, said, how do you have both? How do you have both the Bailim and the Kayin? Those are two different people. So explains the Brisa very simply, 3 lines down, excuse me, and they wave it together. Says the Gemara, why is the Mishnah giving over a din in an exclusive opinion of Lazban Yaakov? Frek the Gemara, V'leima nami kedivri Rav Yehuda. Why don't we say that even according to Rav Yehuda, the Tanya on the 4th line, Rav Yehuda, Rav Nichasai, V'inachta, excuse me, you should place it Zutenufa. You're telling me it's Tenufa, or maybe it means to put it down. That's where the din of Tenufa comes in. So why are we saying it's only Lazban Yaakov? Frak the Gemara. Why don't we say that it's also Rabbi Yehuda? The reason is, since Rav Lazar ben Yaakov, we said it's him because the pasuk opens with it first. And Rav Lazar ben Yaakov learns the din of Tenufa from there, which the pasuk of Inicha is later on, a few psukim later. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar Hayel v'Rav Gavrei, because Rav Lazar ben Yaakov's Torah is great. So it's interesting, the Terutzim of the Gemara seem to be indicating that we're not, and Rashi actually points a very, very, very important Maimer Chazal, Mishnah Rav Lazar ben Yaakov Kavanaki, but it sounds like it's not really only Rav Lazar ben Yaakov in exclusion to everything else, but rather we mentioned him for a sidebar reasonings. Says the Gemara, Frag the Gemara, my Kamar, what in the world does the Mishnah mean? Carbon to Tenufa. Whether it's a male or a female's carbon is enough Tenufa. O Tenufa Atzma be Yisrael, and it's done by Yisraelim. Ava loy bidei nashim. It's done by male Yisraelim, but not by a woman. If a woman's carbon is only waved by the kohen, so if it's a male kohen, then the bailim wave it together with the kohen. Tanarabanan b'nei Yisrael meinifin v'inaka meinifin, says the Brisa, Yidin do tenufa nahat kohen. B'nei Yisrael meinifin v'inanashim anifos, males and not females. Rav Yesi. Masidish chol because of being carbon Yisrael carbon akom. We see that the Torah differentiates between carbon Yisrael and carbon akom, the carbon nashim b'smicha. Yachol, I would think, nach like b'tenufa. Why does it differentiate regarding the waving as well? Lai, mali l'chalik b'smicha. Just like there's a chalik between Yisraelim and akom and a woman regarding smicha, so too, Shasmicha b'bailim, nachlak b'tenufa, shatenufa b'koyanim, imkein, matam alaymer b'nei Yisrael, b'nei akom anifim, b'nei Yisrael, b'nei anashim anifais. Says the Gemara, that's what we need the extra drasha for. Tani idachs, now we have another Brisa, b'nei Yisrael, and li'ala b'nei Yisrael. Keirim v'avadim v'shuchrarim minayin. So you told me we excluded goyim, we excluded women. What about Kirim and Avadim? Tamalaymar Hamakriv. Oyeno Yella, Zaykoina Makriv, Shemer Yodav Tiviana, Hari Bailim, Amara, Keita, Goim, Yodav, Takzidi Bailim, O May Nif. Keita, and we turn over to Samach Bezim and Alf. Says the Brisa, actually, we'll stop over here because the Brisa is just going to go a little bit deeper into the precise procedure of the Tenufa, how it's ways. But let's pick it up over here. And the next year, Amirza Hashem.